the young people.
Thank you.
And, you know, I'm Lieutenant Commander Sterling Van Pelt, 20-year veteran of the United States Navy, and served from 1960 to 1980, and I was a Navy pilot. And so I'm going to try to talk to you a little bit about the Navy. The first thing I want to tell them, just to familiarize themselves with, is the Navy is broken down by, it's very simple, subsurface, surface, and aviation. And of course they all work together, and so on and so forth. I would have knowledge of all of them because I worked with all of them in various stages and so forth. But I was active in the aviation portion of the Navy. And then the other thing I wanted to point out to them, you got a marker?
Yeah, I put it on the kitchen table.
And I'm giving you information for the young people, okay? And I would tell them, have you ever been familiarized with the head of the snake or the head of the spear? And it's the same principle, but if you've got, I'll draw the spear because it's easier. The head of the spear is here, and you got something back here that you carry the spear with. If it were a snake, this would be the head of the snake, and this would be his tail. Well, in military lore, right here, these are the people who are at the greatest risk. These are the people who are flying the machines, in the jungles, doing hand-to-hand combat. It can, hundreds, thousands of missions. But these are the, for lack of a better term, these are your killers. And that's a fact. Military, and it doesn't matter whether you're an officer or an enlisted man. Officers and enlisted men will serve and be assigned all along this thing. This is the killer, and this is where the greatest opportunity to die is right here. It's called the head of the spear. When you go into certain things, like Dan and I were pilots, we're on the head of the spear, right there. Not every flight, no, was going to be combat related or anything like that, but the nature of your job was right here. And it's something to remember when you're going in and making a choice of what you want to do with your life, because we found that people later on, when things got pretty tough in some squadrons I was in, people had turned in their wings, actually turned in their wings, not because they were afraid. They had children at home. They had wives. And they just hadn't put that together. And we had already killed somebody in our squadron. We had seen a number of people die in the training command and so forth. And it's pretty, some of it gets tough. And they went in and they just laid their wings on the captain's table. And when you take your wings off and you lay them down and the wings hit the table, you cannot pick them up again. You are done. You will never be a Navy pilot again. That's tradition with the Navy. But I just want to let them know that that's true of all military jobs and things. And then I guess the best thing to do, and I would encourage the kids to interrupt me and ask a question and so forth, and was how did I come about this? In the 1950s, in Vietnam and Indochina, the French were pulling out of Indochina, and I don't know if you all remember a place called Dien Bien Phu. It fell, and the French were driven out of Vietnam. that point, I guess it was Eisenhower at that point, the United States said, we gotta go in there. And they started, right then. Well, what this led to was by 1960, when I was in college and had finished up 2 years in engineering and was supposed to go to 2 more years at the University of Maryland, I didn't quite know if I had the money to make it. And I had good grades. I was an honor graduate from high school, and the Navy came along and came to the colleges and said, we want your engineering people with good grades. Give us their information. Well, they contacted us and they said, if you will leave now, we will send you to Pensacola and you will go through training and so forth, and then you will be commissioned and you will spend 3.5 years in your first squadron, and then afterwards you will be sent back to the U.S. Navy Postgraduate School, and we will pay completely for your education, and you will go through as lieutenant senior grades, which is a captain then, of course, on flight pay. You have to fly your proficiency and continue as pilots and go to school, and they finished us off, and I did that. Now I'll double back to the first squadron. The training command, I can tell you, the hardest thing that you'll ever do, that I ever did in my life. I guess that's why most of us who have a lot of pride in those golden wings, we know 26 of us started out and 6 of us finished. And that's the attrition. Sometimes it was people that didn't have the knowledge, they just couldn't fly. One guy would throw up as soon as he got near an aircraft. And they said, sorry son, you're not for it. But anyway, about 5 or 6 out of 25 or 26 people. And the training was quite difficult. It came fast. They would show you a particular maneuver on, say, a flight, a dual flight, and say, okay, here's how you spin the aircraft. When you spin an aircraft, fixed wing aircraft, you pull it up and you stall it, and then it goes like this, nose down, like that. And you are going down very rapidly, nose down, and you've got to stop it and stop the rotation, get your stick forward, unload the wing, and get speed over air over your wings and fly out of it. If you've got enough altitude to do that, you survive. If you don't have enough altitude, you die. But we started with enough altitude, but we also knew when you're in a landing pattern or somewhere like that, you did not stall the aircraft. If you stalled the aircraft in, say, a 1,000-foot landing pattern, and it rolled off on a wing, it was over. It was done. But we were trained, and we did that well. But anyway, I just wanted to make a point that in the training, they would take you up and say, okay, here's how you spin the aircraft. Dual flight. Show me. He'd show you. You got that? Got that. You do it. You would do it, maybe you'd mess it up. You'd say, try it again. You would do it again. Recovery from a spin is one of the most required things for a pilot. And then they would tell you, okay, you're good. You're coming out on the next flight tomorrow, and you come up here and you do that 10 times all by yourself. You've already tried it about 10 times with a dual. And he said, you can do it. Do it. So we did. But then they built on that. And then the next thing they would say is, and I'm just pulling some maneuvers here, Immelman, Dan, doing an Immelman. In an Immelman, you're flying like this, and you want to get going in that direction up there. So you pull up, and when you roll up in this position, right about there, you roll. And that puts you up here. You're slower, you've lost airspeed, but if you're doing dog fighting and so forth, like that, that was just one maneuver. But they would also tell you, when you get up here, don't stall. Okay? And it's not real difficult, but it's a hard maneuver you have to get onto. And they said if you stall, you will spin. And it's possible that you can get into an inverted spin, flat. Now the aircraft is on its back, it's laying flat, and it's coming down like this. And we said to him, okay, when do we do that? And the instructor said, never. Don't get into it. It's about a 99% chance. And there was a technique where you had to go hard right on the rudder pedals and so forth and be just right to get out of it. But they said no. Nobody shows you that. And if you ever get into it, good luck. But anyway, that was the way the training went. So when you got there, you had gone through a lot of that. And it's also why if there was the slightest indication that you weren't going to be able to do it, you were out. Because they knew you'd kill yourself. And you had to know your craft. Okay, so off they send me to my first squadron, and I decided to go into rotary wing on my own. I could have gone multi-engines, I could have gone single engine ADs, AD5s, Dan. I could have gone AD5s, but I decided I wanted to do something new and went rotary wing. And pilots have different skills. I was not a person who liked acrobatics. I could do them fine, I never liked it. Dan, on the other hand, is the kind of guy, if he's laying on his back, he's happy as a lark. But they did find out that some of us could fly instruments. And a lot of fighter pilots we knew couldn't fly instruments at all, Dan. I'm sorry.
Understand?
But anyway, because of that, they sent me to an anti-submarine warfare squadron on the USS Randolph. And it was an old attack carrier from World War II. And we were out. There were 2 task forces in the Atlantic Ocean. And we had fixed-wing anti-submarine warfare, helicopters that flew anti-submarine warfare, and an A-4 attack aircraft, a jet, which would drop bombs, rockets, so on and so forth. We kept 2 of those aboard. So we went out and we fought the Russian submarines, and we spent many, many hours. But what made that mission so difficult, when the sun goes down at night and you get on an aircraft and you're 180 miles, 300 miles, 500 miles from what's called your bingo. Bingo means get back to the beach. You're out of bingo range. And when you passed that island and they launched you, it went black. You could spray the canopies and could see nothing. And you had to go right there on those gauges and fly that aircraft. And that's when an airliner is coming in making an approach, and they have to make an approach and they got to go on instruments and so forth. That mission they gave us lasted for 5 hours. We never saw anything outside of the aircraft for 5 hours. It rained, we still went. Little turbulence, we still went. But the important thing was, in anti-submarine warfare, you went down and for 5 hours, you were on the gauges between a 40-foot hover and 150 feet. And you were in the North Atlantic, and if that engine coughed, you were 150 miles from the ship. And you were taking the place of a destroyer on station. And if that engine coughed, they'll never get to you in time. And they'll never recover the remains. That's what made that mission so, so difficult. And you would come back and it was like 5 hours of that was wow. just wild. That's when some of the fellows gave up their wings. Anyway, went through that. We did the Cuban Missile Blockade. We got the missiles out of Cuba. We didn't have to drop any weapons on them. We could have put torpedoes on them. We could have put depth charges on them. And I will tell you one thing, because you all know about Jack Gilderly. And Jack was out there flying his fixed wings, and we would have a smoke in the water and go hot. Go hot means we had a submarine contact that we knew, and Jack would be down flying his aircraft with magnetic anomaly detection, which when the submarine's there, it's so big, it changes the magnetic field of the Earth. So magnetic anomaly detection. Jack would fly down, and we'd be sitting over here on the same contact with a big sonar dome in the water. And with 3 of us out there, we would jump ahead, because the nuclears could outrun the destroyers. They were noisy when they did that, but they would outrun them. And that's why the fixed wings and the helicopters went on 3 wolf packs, and we jumped ahead, and so forth. But I also told Jack, if Jack got hot, they would come down, and I heard this a million times, and he would swing down over the aircraft, and we'd be sitting there watching all this, and you couldn't see anything except you could see lights. And if he got hot, he'd say, "Madman, madman, madman." And I told Jack the last time I saw him, I said, "Jack, you and I are the only ones in this room who know what madman, madman, madman means." And Jack's in bed, and he doesn't get up now like he used to come to church. And he's 104. And anyway, went from there to back to school as a Navy provost. Left there, went to Boeing Vertol, and test flew the H-46 and the H-47 Chinook, Army Chinooks. We actually bought Army aircraft and Navy aircraft. I was in charge of the actual flight operations at the airport in Philly, and we had to fly roughly 32 aircraft a month. And I even got pictures of the guys over there. And so we cranked those out. And we probably bought, I don't know how many, but we would complete a test hop after Boeing had tested it. We would go out and put it through the same test rigger and bring it back in. And then we would go out to the other plant outside of Philly, because if you bought it in Philly, Philly got a tax. So Boeing said, go to that plant and sign the DD-250. And they would come running out to the aircraft, and we would sign the DD-250, and we just bought an aircraft for the United States government. We did that 32 times a month. And then they threw in something called an IRON, which were reworks, and that added about 10 aircraft a month on top of everything else. But that was the kind of stuff going in Vietnam. I want to double back to one point I wanted to make to the kids about when they train you, and we first got aboard that first squadron, HS-7. We had never been aboard an aircraft carrier, except we flew aboard. Well qualified. They'd never been on one. And they picked us up in Norfolk and flew us out on a COD, a carry-on-board delivery aircraft, twin engine. And he landed and caught a wire, and we got our stuff out of the aircraft, and they said, "Go down to Ready Room 1. And we walked in, and we thought, well, we're going to get some indoctrination, and I'm hungry. Captain walked up to us, and he said, "Gentlemen, welcome to the HS-7. He said, go down, the mate of the deck will take you down and show you where your bunk is. Take your stuff down there and get in your flight gear. The flight deck mess is at such and such a place. Go get a bite to eat and be up here at 7 o'clock at night. You're on the first launch out of here." And my point to the kids would have been, if you didn't learn it, now you understood why the instructors only let 25% of the people go through. Because later on, the demand was going to be there, and the assumption was you are what you say you are, get out there and perform it. And if you weren't good at it, you could die. So I wanted to make a point to the kids, right now, set sights. Take every technical course you can take. Your country needs you. Get into engineering, chemistry, physics, anything. Study, listen to these teachers, because you're running out of time. You've got a few years and your schooling is over. And if you haven't gotten enough education to go on, you're in trouble. You may never make it big in life. So that would be the point there. Let's see, then after I did that, then I got, as usual, they sent me to Vietnam and on Yankee Station, and we did vertical replenishment, and they would bring a carrier up alongside the big supply ship. And I had an attachment and 2 big helicopters, and they had 3 hangar bays on the back of it, and all the ships and everything had either decks or landing areas for things where you would put loads down. It was not unusual if a carrier, like say the Constellation or one of those, pulled up alongside, and they would put lines across and send black oil over and things like that, and they would put a thing called a Burton rig over. A Burton rig would take supplies, solids, okay? In the meantime, there's lines over going jet fuel, black oil, thousands, millions of gallons being pumped into that carrier. And we could do the equivalent with 1 aircraft of all the Burton rigs on that ship. We could pick up a load if they're alongside and go like that, drop it, back, hook up, drop, back, hook up, drop, 45 seconds. And they would get me up in the morning early and say, okay, we're going to go alongside at such and such a time, and are you guys ready? Yes, sir, we're ready. And okay, you got 740 pallets going over today. And the longest I ever did that for one time was 7 hours, and had to refuel the aircraft twice. So, and then we had missions in Vietnam, and some missions where we had to drop loads on the back of destroyers in the middle of the night. In fact, I'll tell you that one real quick. He called me out of bed, and the captain said, we had secured for flight quarters, the ships had pulled away, and he said, the admiral just sent a request down, he needs 5-inch ammunition. And he said, we got to get it on the back of the destroyer. He's coming off the firing line off Hanoi and Haiphong. He said, they want it. It was 400 feet overcast and rain. And he said, you got it. I called down, I said, get the bird ready, get the load ready. And we picked up, and at 400 feet, we went into the flag, and raining like crazy. And we got to the other end, and this is good. This is a good one. We got to the other end, and the guy said, okay, your destroyer, your target is 3 miles ahead, and we're going to drop you down, and you'll pick him up visually. And we did. They run red lights, but that doesn't give you enough light. So we get down, and we get on the back of that destroyer with that load, and get this picture, that destroyer is going like this. 26 knots. And you're going 26 knots right behind me. And I said, hey guys, you know, we don't do this in the middle of the night. I need some more light. And they said, negative on the lights. No, can't do that. How are we going to do this? And I said, well, I need some more red lights. Don't have any more. Have you got any Christmas tree lights? Yeah, because the Navy rigs at Christmas time. I said, can you get to them quick? And they said, yeah. And I said, ask Charlie Oscar, the skipper of the ship, commanding officer, if he'll let you put Christmas trees around the fantail. And I said, just anchor them real good and tie them off. So for 20 minutes we sat there, like this, pouring rain, and all of a sudden the deck lit up with Christmas tree lights. And I called my crewman and I said, Newt, have you got that deck in sight? And he said, yes, sir, I got it in sight. I said, you make sure that that load is as far back on that ship as you can get it. And he did, and our blades were, about that close to the superstructure. If Newt had gone further, because he takes control of the aircraft, because he's dropping the load, it would have been over. Anyway, but I thought you'd like that story about the Christmas tree lights. So I came back from Vietnam, and then they sent me back to the Naval Safety Center. And I basically did my tours at the Naval Safety Center and retired there. And then even after that, Boeing would call me for expert witness because I became very well qualified and had, well, I just have to say, I had a reputation as one of the best helicopter safety people in the country at that particular time, and Boeing called me as expert witnesses. And I did that, and then Boeing, I retired from the Navy, and I had 20 years of it, and that was enough. And then TVA wanted some engineers. So I called them up and I told them what my background was. And they said, man, we want you to come out here. They hired me into TVA, and initially I did a little safety work. And then I went into all the big steam plants. And the people had written the programs. They used to have handwritten records of maintenance in these huge power plants. They had a situation where if you got records, you'd put a knitting needle through a file drawer and it had holes in it, and when you pulled it up, it would have the records that had the right hole. That was how they recovered data. And I spent the rest of my time with TVA training, looking at drawings and getting the data into the programs and so forth. And we computerized all the plants in TVA that were in power production, big steam plants and that. So anyway, I can strongly recommend the United States Navy. And as I told Larry, the strongest thing I can tell you, when you get right there, and if you make the decision to do that, if you don't know your craft, and I don't care if you're a grunt, Dan knows what a grunt is. A grunt is a guy that carries a rifle and gets in hand-to-hand combat with people and diffuses bombs and things like that. Or you're a pilot or whatever. If you do any operations that put you on the point right there, know your craft. Get your school grades now. Get yourself educated. Learn your craft. Learn your craft. Because you will be there, and when you least expect it, they'll give you a mission that will blow your socks off. And if you don't think pilots get scared sometimes, believe me, they're lying. They really are. Did I run the time?
You're good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I tell you what, did you shut the tape off?
No, it's still running.
We can edit it.
Okay, I'm going to tell them this last one. I told you all about flying the vice president. You all know about that. Do you know who Reza Pahlavi is? Do you know what's going on in Iran? We may go in there and bomb those people. Reza Pahlavi is the son of the Shah of Iran, who was deposed. When I was at the Naval Safety Center, my boss called me in and he said, hey, I want to tell you stupid rotor heads over there, that we got somebody coming in that's pretty important, and he's going to be with you for 6 weeks. He's an Iranian helicopter pilot. I said, oh, okay, send him over. He said, no, they didn't just send him over. He is the son of the Shah of Iran, who was deposed and living in Florida and eventually died in Florida. And he said, and you rotorheads had better respect him and don't give us any lip, you crazy nuts. And we all said, got it, Captain, we'll take care of it. And we had cubicles, and the captain said, send him over. And then the captain came right behind him, looking over the cubicle like this. And he was expecting us to go, Allah. And we said, Reza, come on in, buddy. Hey, that old beat up desk over there, that's yours. Go grab a seat. And Reza Pahlavi said, all right, guys, that's great. Let's have a good time. And we spent 6 weeks with him. And he may next be the Shah of Iran. But he does not want that. He wants a democratic government in Iran. But, well, I don't know if he'll be sent in or not. That's all. But that was Reza Pahlavi. That's another one of my crazy stories. And Dan and I had an agreement. I told him that we could tell sea stories, but there was to be no lies tonight. So he's on it. He can't lie, and I haven't lied to you yet.
Gone to Panama.
Oh my God!
Bob was trying to go down there and kill him.
Okay, no lies. Pilots are sitting down. All right, so I'm Don Smith, a retired Air Force Senior Master Sergeant, as well as Honeywell Aerospace Engineering Director. 42 years playing with airplanes. And I love every minute of it. Went to the Air Force in the latter part of '59, fresh out of a strike at the steel mill, out of options. Got to go somewhere, got to go to school, wanted to learn electronics. And so there was a way to do that. Went out to basic military training in Lackland. From Lackland up to Lowry Air Force Base, Colorado, where the technical schools were. I am not from a military family. Knew nothing about where I was going, except I wanted to learn electronics. So we get in this big room. There's probably somewhere between 70 and 80 of us folks that are fresh out of boot camp, and we're going on to tech school. And they have these things up on the wall where defining these jobs. And this, I didn't know much about that. You know, complex electronic radar and optical systems, navigation, bombing aircraft. I thought, okay, this was the longest one that they offered, so that's what I opted to do. I went and I did that. God was with me, because it's probably the best decision I made for the whole time, because that laid the groundwork for what I was going to do. So, got out of tech school and ended up working on the B-52s. B-52s in bombing community in the Air Force is all stateside assignments. We have deployments, a week or two, a month maybe, or over the Guam was longer, but so it's all stateside. And at that time, the B-52s were still new ones coming out, and we got up to about a total of 700 of them. And my primary job was working on this system here. This is the upgraded one system. At that time, it's all analog systems. They break, get all of that. And this aircraft was built with an in-flight kit so that it can be repaired as you fly. So unbeknownst to me, when I made that selection, I ended up flying on the B-52 as well, doing in-flight maintenance. That was really pretty good for kid coming out of the woods of Pennsylvania getting to fly on a B-52, big beautiful airplane. So this is downstairs, this is the radar nav over here, and this is the bombing computers over there. And this is the tracking handle where it places the radar here on the target out there. And there's an instrument, well, they moved it somewhere, I guess it was right up there. Flight command, and then the pilot has an indicator that he flies, and he just keeps the needle centered up ahead, and you got your to-go meter telling when the weapon will release. On this side over here, this is the navigator side. Most of these guys are located downstairs. At the time, it was a 6-man crew. Now it's down to a 5-man crew. They do not have a gunner on them any longer. These two guys are downstairs, and right back here is where I would fly. It's called an instructor nav seat. There's also one between the pilots, an IP, the instructor pilot seat, and that's where I would fly for takeoffs, landings, air refuelings, and those kind of things. I'd be up there with that. These seats, they go down in case of you have to leave the airplane, blow the hatch, and they're downward ejection seats. And I was to roll out this opening right here, just tumble out. So this is the work environment. This is that big, beautiful airplane. 50, these were made in the latter part of the 50s. And you can see the 8 engines. There was a big thrust 20 years ago to put 4 engines on these, and they spent a lot of time and money doing that, and delayed the re-engineering program. But when they did that and they ran the tests, this stabilizer back there would have to be changed. It was causing a lot of problems in the vertical stabilizer area, and to do that was too much money. So they're back to 8 engines, changing them. Boeing was just put on contract very recently, a $3 billion contract, to start putting the engines on there, and they're Rolls-Royce engines. Same thrust, cleaner burning, quieter, more life to them, and they expect to be flying into the 2050s, which would make them between 90 and 100 years of flying on those airplanes. This right here is the refueling receptacle. So our boys out here at the airport, when they're flying and they're hitting the 52s, that's where the receptacle goes down there. These are just airborne missiles, various kinds of missiles, air-to-airs, air-grounds, some decoy missiles. A lot of that, these are extra fuel tanks out here. Wonderful airplane. Yeah. I thought I heard somebody laughing. So here's my first 10 years. So after tech school, I went back to tech school. I spent 2 years out of the first 3 years of my Air Force career was in school. I was getting what I wanted. I deployed to Spain, got to see the running of the bulls and those kinds of things, and then I deployed to England. I was stationed at Wright Pat, then went to Carswell, Texas, my next assignment. And there, after 9 months there, I deployed to Guam, and that's where the B-52s were sent out of Guam to fly over Vietnam. B-52 crews are part of the strategy of how to protect the weapons in case we are attacked. So you have these exit strategies, and one of them is that the 52s have to get off the ground as quickly as possible. And so what they do is what is called a MITO, minimum interval takeoff. They have a procedure that's used to scramble. So you have a lead airplane takes off, and he's He takes off straight out and climbs out, and then 15 seconds later, one's going down the runway and he's off to the right, and this one's off to the left. The third one, we had 30 airplanes on Guam, so 10 cells. Now, over there, my job, I was on the flight line, a launch truck, there was always a launch truck with assistance of some kind. And if there was a malfunction, I had my flight suit on already, I had my helmet and everything. I would jump on the airplane, close the hatch, and I'm off on the mission, and we try to repair an error. The missions, from when I was over there, before we went north, was quite simple compared to the normal stateside training missions. We would take off from Guam, like I said, 3 in each cell. We'd pick up a tanker coming out of Okinawa. Beautiful nighttime flights where you see all of the tankers out there. Or the Philippines, they would come out of the Philippines. We'd go across mainly the Mekong Delta, drop our load, turn around, and come home. Very, very simple missions. So closest I ever got to Vietnam was like 44,000 feet. So after that episode, I went to Loring Air Force Base in Maine. Kind of nice flight, a lot of snow. Not much exciting, just working on everything. In this time, the early 60, late 59 sometime, Gary Francis Powers got shot down in a U-2. Okay, he got shot down in a U-2. He was an Air Force pilot unknown to the CIA. So the people that do strategies said, we can't get high enough away from these missiles. We're going to have to go low. The bombers are going to go low. So that big, beautiful airplane I showed you got a new radar. It was called an advanced capability of radar. A lot of us called it automatic crew reduction because it took you down on the ground. We were flying at 400 feet down on one of those big bombers, getting down low to get under the radar because we couldn't get above it, right? So when all those instruments and everything that I showed you there, behind there is where the cabling came in, and then there was a bulkhead for the radar. And in that area, we called it the wine cellar, by the way, that area back there. That's where the radar was at. So we would go out and fly this low-level radar, get down on the deck. If the radar picture wasn't aligning with what the pilot's absolute radar altimeters, whatever they would use, if we weren't together, I was in the wine cellar cranking this pot, right? And headset on, enough, you know, back and forth, bouncing along, I mean, crazy stuff. And I did not get flight pay, but I did get hazardous duty pay every month I was in that environment. So a little bonus, I did get extra money. And then Loring, and then from Loring, I got sent to California, unbeknownst to Dan or I at the time. Dan and I were at the same base all that time out there. That's the B-1. So if we saw the B-1 the other day at the Super Bowl flyover, they flew out of Ellsworth Air Base up in South Dakota.
North Dakota.
Pardon?
North Dakota.
I'm sorry?
No, we were trying to figure out where they were. Yeah,
Where what
where
was?
the base was. Yeah,
It's in Ellsworth, South Dakota.
South Dakota, okay.
Ellsworth, South Dakota. I was trying to say Rapid City because that's where it's at. But anyway, so I was sent out to Edwards, and on the way I stopped at Lowry Air Force Base back for more schooling on on the FB-111 bomb nav system, because that's what was installed in that aircraft at that time for the training. So, terrific assignment, best assignment I ever had. I went from a working environment, a real Air Force environment, maybe 1 weekend a month. That low-level radar, nobody else can be on the airplane when you're working on it. So that meant weekends. They could keep everybody off, and you get the airplane to go do your alignments. So anyway, I got out to Edwards, working in a contractor's facility. At the time, it was General Dynamics facility, and it was on the base at Edwards. So strictly day shift, kind of 9 to 5, bank desire stuff, no weekend work. And it gave me an opportunity to catch up on my education. So I was going to school at night, and very supportive wife and family, kept doing that. Working on the B-1 development after the FB-111 missile work was completed. And Sterling was talking about taking his airplane up and losing altitude, losing air. The spin test, the FB-111 spin test that was done out there, I watched it go up and spin and tumble all the way to the ground. We actually watched it. We were on the flight line, on the command post and everything. Watched that go down. Anyway, part of the requirements also was got my FCC first class license. That was part of working in the contractor's facility. The Air Force sent me to school for my master's degree, complete my master's degree. Gave me a choice of UCLA, Cal State Northridge, or Golden Gate University at Victorville, and I took the last one. That way I could live on base at Edwards, travel 60 miles over the desert to school, back and forth and everything. Completed my master's work, which I was very happy about. And then I got sent back to Wright-Patt. This time on the acquisition side of the business. So I started again on the B-1. No sooner got to Wright-Patt, I probably wasn't there a month when President Carter canceled the B-1 program, except for ship number 4, which was the EW airplane. So I went from there to the B-52 offensive avionics, which is all that updated stuff that you saw, all the solid state stuff in the B-52. So I was working on that. I was also sent to school, Air Force Institute of Technology, for a program management class. And pretty proud to say I was the first enlisted program manager in the Air Force at that time. I was the only enlisted guy in the whole daggone office in the ship. But the officers could handle it. So after that, what happened here?
You went back
That's all I want you went backwards.
There we go.
Okay, so left the military, had opportunities for employment, were just great. Had a very supportive spouse who helped me make the selection. She had a degree in common sense that was unbelievable. She helped me make the decision, and it was a good one. So the first 10 years at Honeywell, I was in field marketing, stayed at Dayton for the most part, and supported the programs that Honeywell had in the Dayton area. The Dayton, Wright-Patterson is the largest military acquisition place in the area. I did that. I did some fun things, learned some fun things. One of the first programs that I was working with, I had a doctor coming in from our Power Sources division over someplace over near Philadelphia. he shows up and he's a graduate of Rensselaer Tech, and he's got a PhD in battery science. And I'm looking, what is that? Battery? A PhD? You know, and look where we're at today with batteries. I mean, it's kind of interesting. At the time, I just could not get it. But, so anyway, I was field marketing, and then I got an interim assignment to Northern Virginia to interface with the Pentagon, and I was for Honeywell, I was our Air Force program manager, working in Air Force programs, making sure they got funded, giving the people the information they needed to get the programs approved and everything. Not a fun job, not fun at all really, not very exciting. Traffic, whatever, all that involved with the Pentagon. A lot of black seats, black ties, downs. Wasn't very fun, and successfully got out of that in 13 months. And then I went back to right path. Let me see. Then I fell in love with this concept. This is a line replaceable unit, and this took a navigation system that was the same size. We reduced the gyros, there were ring laser gyros at the time, so we reduced the gyros inside, and we took another unit of the same size and shrunk it down on a card, just a regular electronic card, and that was the GPS. And so the GPS that Honeywell folks first started working on, as well as the up in New England for folks, was a bathtub size. So in the 70s, we're in the bathtub size. In the 80s, we're this size. In the 90s, we got it down on a circuit card. And at the time, we had civilian GPS and we had military GPS. And technically, all we did was skew the commercial side of it by 30 meters. So it could never get any more accurate than that. Other than that, everything's the same, the words come down the same, and the rest of it. So I fell in love with this guy, this concept, and spent a lot of time at the Pentagon. I'm having a hard time getting to the right place here. So I ended up down at the Honeywell Guidance and Ad Division in Florida as a director of marketing to try to market that unit. Another attribute of this is the military used it so that they could have their aircraft ready to go by using the GPS input. GPS itself is a very slow 1 cycle per second type of a unit, and we put it in alongside of our system that's going 200 times per second. We merged those two in there, and for a navigation system needs to be told where it's at before it can navigate inaccurately. Okay, so it needs to be told that. So that's a pilot input, that's a navigator input, that's some crew members' input and everything. Didn't have to do it if you put the GPS in and electronically get it. And since it's a derivative signal by observance, it wasn't didn't have to generate anything. It could be ready pretty quickly and put it in. So it did that. Putting them all together, lightened the load with that box. The wattage required, which is a big deal on airplanes, and real estate, those are really big deals. And at this time, particular time, I found out that the largest air force in the world is United States Army Aviation. They've got Cobras, they've got Apaches, they've got Kiowa warriors, they've got Chinooks, they've got Little Birds. I mean, they have got so many aircraft out there, and we were fitting our units on all of them. So this is Women in Production. This unit, after I retired from the company, this unit won the Collier Trophy Award for industry production. That's like winning the Super Bowl. That doesn't happen. That is so great. Part of my job was I had to get Israelis into production. So I became a frequent flyer from Charlotte to Tel Aviv. You know, the crew members are calling me by name. You know, back and forth. Dealing with the Israelis is a little bit tough at times. The brash attitude and other things. Getting a pitch at the MOD, which is comparable to our Pentagon. It's in a wooden building and shack, and you know, just crazy stuff. But anyway, I was able to do that. So every single KC-135 that you see take off and land out here at the field has our navigator in it, that unit that I showed you, and it was assembled in Israel. You know, that's I sent it over there. That was the one I decided that I wanted them to build because it's small. It's not a complex system. It's a smaller system. Had a good number of them so that I could meet our requirement. I think our requirement was they had to build 300 of them or something. So they were able to do that. And so anyway, I love to see these 135s flying. Just reminds me of my times there. Here we go, back again. That's it. That was 20 years, 42 years. My Air Force career, I loved it. I was married on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. All three of my children were born in military hospitals. I went in with a high school diploma, come out with a master's degree, and a lot of background, successful industry. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey Don, when you were in Vietnam and you were dropping, did you drop the 500-pound bomb loads?
Yeah, 500 pounders, that's all we
Yeah,
had.
for saturated.
54 of them.
When we were on Yankee Station, if in Yankee Station we sometimes get closer to the coast, you know, depending on what was going on that night. But at night, if it was very, very quiet and we weren't really operating, we'd go back on the flight deck and we'd hear and somebody said, that sounds like a machine gun. And I said, no, that's not a machine gun. That's a B-52, and that's what, every time you hear one of those poops, that's a 500-pound bomb.
But we were bombing the Mekong Delta.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is up north.
For radar to work, it has to be able to reflect, okay? The Delta is jungle, there's no reflection.
Yeah.
So what you could hear and what people have reported was that Army helo that was out there with a beacon on it, okay? And then we would offset from the beacon to where we would drop the load because we couldn't see it, just jungle. And I forgot to mention that there's only about 10% of the B-52s that are flying today. So of the original 700, so we got 70 flying. They are located on two bases. One is Minot, North Dakota, and the second one is in Barksdale, Louisiana. So you have those two down the center of the country. And the B-1s are in Ellsworth, South Dakota, and downtown Abilene, down at Dice Air Force Base in Abilene. So they're in the center part of the country, away from the water. And then, of course, the B-2s that we've heard about, they're out of Whiteman, Missouri. So that's all the Oklahoma bases they are, and they're away from the water as far as they can get away from this water, from the slickums and stuff.
Less complicated. kids than Sterling's and Don's. I grew up as a small town boy in a town of about 3,000 people. Cotton fields, tobacco fields. Didn't have 100 kids in our school graduate with us. So when it was time to go to college, I didn't have a clue as to what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be, which college I wanted to go to. But I chose a little place called the Citadel down in Charleston, South Carolina. Really introduced to the military right off the bat. Basically, they weeded out the weak ones very quickly. We started with 850 and graduated from 130. And we lost the majority of them within the first year. So, after high school, after college, got a commission, went into the military, turned down my flight commission. Said, I don't want to be in school I want to be in college or in the military for 5 or 6 years. I'll take something else. But they put me in maintenance school. So I went to maintenance school, figured out, went back to Charleston on the C-5 and the C-141 as a maintenance officer. So I learned a little bit about airplanes. But my boss was an airport jockey who got shot down in Vietnam, plucked out of the rice fields by an Army chopper. And he convinced me to go back to flight school. He and I kind of hit things off together. So when he said, it's time to go back to flight school, I said, okay, I've got learned a little bit about maintenance on the airplanes. Now I think I want to go to jump school. I want to go to Army jump school. So, okay, he said, fine. So we picked Fort Benning, Georgia, in the month of August to go to jump school. Not a good choice. But I learned how to get out of an airplane, shoot-wise, how to handle myself in flight, how to survive if you had to jump out, which was a start. After we got out of flight school, after we got out of jump school, we went to flight school. Valdosta, Georgia. We had 80 kids in my class. I graduated number 5, which was not the best out of the class. But based on your ranking in the class, you got to pick the airplane. There's a whole list of airplanes coming down. You pick what you wanted. Luckily, I picked an F-4, which was the Phantom, which was the top line fighter going to Vietnam right off the bat. Once I got the F-4 and went to training, I went to training down in Homestead, Florida. Got through flight training, went through sea survival there, went to Washington State, went through survival in February in the snow, and that was the POW training in the camp. So POW training, basically they'll put you in a 4 to 4.5 foot closet. Just a whole room of closets. They give you a coffee can. There's no lights, and they come by and they beat on the door every 10 minutes to be sure you can't sleep. And they leave you in there for 2 days. And then they teach you a little bit about how to survive that type of environment. Anyway, that's just part of it. Went from there to jungle survival in the Philippines. Eye awakening, a little hot. Right from there, right to Vietnam. In my squadron, we got there. I don't know how I got the positions I got to, but one of my jobs was a functional check light pilot. You'll certainly knows what that is. Anytime an F-4 had to go in for maintenance, engine overhaul, hydraulic overhaul, anything, it was my job to fly the airplane first. I'd fly that airplane, check it out before it could go back on the line for the average pilot to fly. I'm an average guy anyway. Nothing special about mine. But that was enjoyable because I learned a lot. Now, the kids were here, I was going to ask questions, but since you're my kids tonight, I'm going to ask more questions. I've got 3 scenarios I'm going to talk about. And I want you to tell me if it was dumbass luck, if it was skill survival, or if it was divine intervention. I'll go ahead and give you a couple of them. The first one, In the month of January and February in Southeast Asia, they burn every rice field they can find. There's nothing but smoke. If you got 100 feet off the ground, it's solid smoke. It only lasts about 100 feet. And then you're in clear blue sky. One of the missions out was to test the electrical system. And the procedure was to shut down both the electrical systems and deploy something that's called a RAT, ram air turbine, which provides electricity to you while you're flying. Well, I did all this procedures, put it out, and it chewed up the blades on the RAT. So now I'm at 30,000 feet. I got no electrical power. I got no backup. I got no navigation system. I got nothing. Not one thing. And it's solid clouds as far as you can see. I have no clue where the base is. To this day, I don't know how I got down. I couldn't tell you. Couldn't find the base, but I found it somehow, and we don't know how. Scenario number 2. I flew an airplane from northern Thailand to the Philippines for a major overhaul. And when I got over there, I was to pick up one and bring it home. So I got over there, the backseater was with me. He's my weapons system officer, my NAV. We landed, went to the officers club like normal, spent the night in the old club, ate. We ate the same meal. Mongolian barbecue, I'll never forget it. Got up the next morning, picked up the airplane in Philippines, did our pre-flight. What we were supposed to do is take off, go up overhead, go up to 20,000 feet, and refuel to get all the way back to the coast of South Vietnam to hit another tanker to get into northern Thailand. We got fuel, and about an hour and a half into the flight, Frank got sick in the back seat. Then I got sick in the front seat. We both have food poisoning. We're throwing up. We're filling up bag 1 and 2. Then the electrical system goes out. We have no electrical system. Then the hydraulic system goes out. We're in the clear right now, but there's a cloud bank right in front of us. The only thing we're steering with is a compass. We had the emergency code set in and a radio code, 7600, 7700, working off the battery. Well, we get to where I think the coast is, based on the time, for us to hit a tanker to refuel. No tanker. We can't find it. We have no way to find it. So we briefed the ejection, should we have to. We figured our gas out, knew what we had, knew where we were going. We crossed the South Vietnamese coastline, and we headed up into Thailand. I look over on my left wing, there's an RF-4 sitting there. So we do our hand signals, and he knows how much fuel I have, and he knows exactly where I'm going because it's a relay from the ground. So he sets us up on approach, and my fuel is down to fumes. And I already briefed Frank, but he has a handle in the back. He can turn that handle one way to eject us both if the engine's burnt. We broke out at about 200 feet, doing about 230 to 240 miles an hour. Normal landing speed's about 140. But when you have no hydraulics and you have no flight controls, basically for your flaps, you got a flat landing. Touchdown with 800 pounds of fuel, which is about 120 gallons of gas. If we'd had to go into burner to go around, we'd have landed out right there. Now, what do you think? I got one more, but I'm going to get into it a little bit later. I want to tell you about a kid. He's my nephew. Jeff DeLiz, he used to come to the farm when he was 10 years old. He'd put that helmet on, and he'd run around the house, pretending to be a pilot. He wanted to be a pilot, just because of that helmet. Jeff got picked up by the Naval Academy to play football. He wound up being captain of the Navy football team. His first aircraft out of flight school with the Navy was the F-18. And Jeff went on to be one of the top guys in the F-18. In fact, he was selected to go to the Navy Top Gun School with the F-18. He graduated number 1. I went to his graduation. During the graduation, the speaker was a backseater who had 6 MiG kills in Vietnam. He flew with Randy Cunningham in the Navy, plus one other guy after Randy left. First question that speaker asked was, what is the one trait a fighter pilot has to have to be good? Anybody know what it is?
Respect for the plane.
Courage.
Okay.
Guts.
Not one Top Gun graduate knew the answer. But some crusty old Air Force fighter pilot sitting in the back spoke right up, got the answer. Anybody know what it is?
Courage, no.
It doesn't have to be a pilot. It can be in business, it can be in real estate, it can be in banking, it can be in anything.
Determination. Trust.
Self-confidence. If you don't have self-confidence, if you go into a mission or a dogfight and you have similar equipment, you might have better equipment, but if you don't have self-confidence, you're going to get shot down. If you got good self-confidence, you can make that airplane work any way you want it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
After Jeff graduated from there, he got a special billet to go to the Air Force Fighter Weapons School in the F-35. He graduated number 1 at Nellis Air Force Base. Went back to the Navy as an instructor pilot. Turned down a command position in the Navy because he didn't want to go out to sea again because of his wife. They put him in an office job, and so I talked to Jeff for a while. Jeff quit the Navy after 16 years. Quit. Went back to Nellis, flying the F-35 in the Air Force Guard Unit at Nellis. He transferred to the Fighter Weapons School to be an instructor. That's how much the Air Force, and I'm sure Sterling knows, the Air Force is more of a family organization versus the Navy, you're kind of a number, right, Sterling?
Yes, yes.
It doesn't mean anything. But he's having a ball. He's loving it. Let's see what else we got here. I want to get to the film. I don't want to talk a whole lot because, you know, this boring stuff just drives kids up the wall. Like everybody else, I came out of Southeast Asia and went back to Holloman Air Force Base as an instructor pilot, fighter lead-in. Went out to Edwards for a while, did developmental testing for the AT-38, which is putting a weapon system on a T-38 for training, and got picked up by the T-Bird team and went to Nellis to fly his number 4 position. Now, there's some bad things about being a fighter pilot or a demo pilot. Like Sterling said, we lost 7 guys in 6 years. Charlie Carter hydroplaned at Cheyenne, Wyoming. On landing, stayed with the airplane, got his crew chief out, he died. Nick House, stall an airplane, take off at Hill Air Force Base, didn't make it out, he got killed. Commander Leader, D.L. Smith, 1981, take off out of Cleveland, dark, going to another show site. Ingests birds in both engines. Airplane stalls. His crew chief gets out. D.L. didn't make it. 1982. Diamond 2 on the line of breast loop. Which means if you're on the wing, you're actually looking over your shoulder to stay in perfect formation. The accident report read a jam stabilizer on number 1. There was never a brake call. All 4 guys were killed. That's part of the bad stuff. The one thing I got out of it that nobody's really talked about, and my accident was in between all this stuff. Most fighter jets have what's called a Martin Baker ejection seat, which means you can be sitting on the ground and eject and survive. We didn't have that.
It's not unheard of to get through a full assignment without a major accident, but
I didn't do anything, did I?
it's rare.
Did I?
That's okay.
If those guys had had an ejection seat that was a Martin Baker, they would have lived. The ejection seat wouldn't have helped me at all for my accident. This is the third scenario. We took off on a practice air show mission out of Las Vegas. We go to Creech Field to practice, which is a normal base that we go to practice, which is the entrance to the military weapons center, where they do all the red flag stuff. Halfway there, we get a call that said, range is closed, you have to divert. So we diverted and went up in the mountains to a place we didn't brief. And this was the Diamond only that day. Keep guy hold up 3 feet for me. Show me what 3 feet is. Okay, when we fly 3 feet apart. And we do 400 miles an hour to 500 miles an hour.
Oh,
If we travel, we fly at 4 feet. But going over at 3 feet all the time. On this particular mission, I had split off to do a Calypso pass with what the Solo would have done. And following that was to do a rejoin. In that rejoin, we didn't brief a minimum altitude for that day. I was in full afterburner, doing in excess of 500 miles an hour, and hit a railroad tie in the ground. Shoved the rudder pedals up through both of my legs, sheared the bottom of the airplane off, sheared the ejection seat off, canopy imploded. I got the airplane back up in the air again, and when I did, it pitched over, enough gravity forced the seat just to go up the rail, and a drogue chute pulled me out by the seat. And when they took the pictures, it showed me sitting on the ground with the chute and the seat right next to me. So I hit the ground doing who knows what, well over 100, broke everything. Luckily, there was an Army helicopter right across the next ridge. He heard the ELT go off, which was an electronic transmitter that went off the emergency transmitter. He called the boss and said, hey, can I help? He was on me in 10 minutes. Number 2 went up high, turned on his smoke so that they could find us. The boss went by me 3 times. The first 2 times, he radioed back, said there's no movement. I don't think he made it. The 3rd time, I waited him. So anyway, they strapped me down, stopped the bleeding, got me back to Nellis, stayed in the hospital for 10 days. Wasn't supposed to walk again. Flying with the airlines in 6 months after that. So, what would that be? Is that divine intervention? Was that dumbass luck or what?
All the above.
Fine.
Anyway, I could go on and on and on about all this stuff. Sterling's all been there, they all been there. What I really wanted to show the kids was the film. This talks about the Thunderbirds, it talks about a little bit of everything. Please ask questions as this thing runs.